Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am here with Justin Patrick Pierce, and he is a men's embodiment coach, a relationship coach, also with his partner, London Angel Winters. And we've had London on the podcast as well. And I'm so happy that he is the first person, the first male guest in this season of the podcast, because about 10 years ago, I went to a workshop with him and London, and it was so powerful. It was the first time I actually experienced the polarity work, the yoga work involved in greater relationship, greater union between man and women for that juicy, divine connection that we all crave so much. So I feel like he played a really important role on my journey. And then over the years, I've been in contact with London. And as I mentioned, she was on the podcast. So it's so great to have you here, Justin. I love your work. And of course, I thought of you immediately when I thought of doing this season of the podcast. So thank you so much for being here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself and what you're passionate about right now and what you're working on.
It's great to see you again, Nikki. I can't believe it's been that long, right? It goes fast. Well, since then, London and I, we've had a child, so we're parents now. Our daughter's almost 7 years old right now. And the focus of our lives had just continued to be this body of work, this exploration, because for London and I, this really is our way of life. This is a spiritual path. So our work has deepened. We've been writing books. Our newest book, Playing with Fire, that came out over the last couple of years. And our commitment just continues to be showing up together in this practice. And it's the things we learn by showing up and doing this work together on a day-to-day basis that creates the overflow that we share with others and we teach at our workshops and write in our books.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, and today I want to specifically talk about communication to create greater union and connection between men and women. And I know that in your body of work, you don't really use the term masculine, feminine, you use more alpha, omega. And we can talk a bit about that, where it applies, if it applies. And we're going to talk about a specific thing in communication for men and women, something that we both do that we don't realize can hurt the connection and partnership. So let's actually begin with the ladies first. And so, ladies, I feel that we can have a tendency, especially for like high-powered women who are very comfortable with our more alpha masculine nature, that we're so independent. Like we really can do everything on our own. And we don't even realize that sometimes we can talk to our men like we're mothering them. And it's the biggest kill of polarity. And I take full responsibility that I have been guilty of this. And I want to give an example of what I mean by this, where it emasculates our men and it causes them not to want to lead us. And it shuts them down, really. And so mothering is a masculine energy. It's basically telling someone what to do or how to do it. And I always like to give the example, one that I've been guilty of in relationship, where, for example, let's say if your beloved wants to help you or help the space by washing the dishes. And instead of just being like, oh, yes, thank you, my love, you washed the dishes, like I'm so happy, you say, oh, why are you doing it like that? I'm not supposed to put the soap in the sink and put all the water. That's gross. Then you're going to have soap suds and you're supposed to do it like this, or you're supposed to use the dishwasher, or you're supposed to put it on the sponge and then wash it and then rinse it off, and tell him how to create clean dishes versus, who cares? The dishes are clean. Just be grateful. Show him your gratitude. Give him a lap dance because he did the dishes. Like, make it fun versus like shutting him down because he didn't do it the way you would do it. So, Justin, I would love to hear from your side as the masculine. Like, what does that do to a man? Like, if you want to support the space between you and your woman, and then she goes and says something, and also in your experience, like, what does this do? It's just so women can really understand that and take responsibility and shift it.
I don't know too many men or women who like being micromanaged, right? Because everything that you're sharing right now is coming from the tone of judgment and criticism and control, right? A lot of us, particularly men, we want to be in relationship with a woman who feels soft and who trusts our lead. Almost every man I've ever worked with would love to have that in an intimate partner. And the longer we're in a relationship with a partner, it seems like that's harder and harder to create. It's like the longer we're together, the both of us harden. And these expressions, like the one that you're sharing now, these little criticisms and judgments come out on both sides of the street. And then we're always feeling on the defensive. We always have our guard up. So a man in that situation has two options. He's either going to try and out alpha you and argue with you. No, you're doing it wrong. This is how you do it. Duh, 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 duh. You don't know what you're talking about. There's that, like coming over and on top. And the other common way is he'll shrink. He'll be like, oh, okay, you know better. And then he becomes small and collapsed. And I don't think most women want that from their partner either. And so there's this push-pull and there's this chicken. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Dynamic between both partners where you're in a dance together and we're shutting each other down through our criticisms, through our judgments, through our harsh ways of communicating. And that's why as we explore intimacy, communication is key. Communication is key. But what's so different about the work that I teach is I don't teach communication in the form of therapy. It's not like long form conversations and analysis and why is this and why is that and let's make agreements. We teach communication as intimacy. How do you speak in a way that actually preserves polarity? How do you use your body, your breath, your eyes? How do you express what you feel or what you're seeing in a moment that actually amplifies the experience of intimacy in the relationship? That's a paradigm shift. And this body of work is a window into that reality.
Absolutely. And so, based on the example I just shared, what's the best way a man could be met? You know, like, what could a woman do? So now let's just say he did do the dishes, right? There's the simple thank you, but we're not even interested in that, right? We're interested in what's going to open my man and create the most chemistry. And how is this even going to lead to the bedroom then? You know, like, what could be said or done like that that would really bring a man into his, just want to ravish her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're just going to go straight for that, you know, touching his back, putting a hand on his chest and saying, it's so hot when you wash dishes. I mean, that's it right there. But I want to break this down into the dynamics. And this is why the three ways of relating in our work is so important. And this is why we don't use the words masculine and feminine. Sure, we could talk about masculine and feminine traits. But what's more interesting is we use the terms alpha and omega because there's nothing masculine or feminine about them when we really understand these terms. Alpha means you're in work mode. You're in task mode. Alpha means you're in your seer. What is your partner up to? Oh, I see you're doing that wrong. You're an alpha. If you're seeing and observing the situation, you're an alpha in that moment. And if you have a task you're trying to accomplish, you're an alpha. Now let's look at washing the dishes, for example, right? Because when you live with your partner, you're going to have a lot of alpha alpha moments. In fact, most couples get stuck in alpha alpha dynamics. It's when both of you have a task to complete. You're both in work mode, go mode, and both of your alphas are useful. Now, this could lead to powerful partnership, but it can also lead to the butting of heads. So we have to be so intentional. How do we navigate alpha alpha? Because it's okay that a woman's an alpha. It serves. It's productive. It gets tasks done, right? So let's look at the dishes, for example. How do you navigate a situation where the two of you are washing dishes together and both of you are an alpha because both of you have a task to complete? If we consider how do we actually get alphas to cooperate and function at the highest level? For example, the military has this saying, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Now, why would they reinforce that? Because they know when working with alphas, if they cross paths and stumble into the same lane, boom, there's going to be conflict. But if two alphas can stay in their lane, they can cooperate and be trusted to do their job. Understanding this, the way that London and I wash the dishes, I wash because I don't like dishwashers. I actually love having the water on my hands, like the warm water. And actually, I think it's very meditative. So I handle that. I put it in the rack. London dries and puts it away. She doesn't tell me how to do my job. I don't tell her how to do hers. And what we say is like, we have a saying at the end of every dinner. It's like, you want to do a power clean. We're just like, yeah, let's do it. And we'll just jump into that mode for 10 minutes. We're in full alpha, alpha, powerful partners. We're not getting in one another's lane. And it's super efficient. And the moment the dishes are done and put away, we snap out of that mode. We turn it off and we come back as lovers. And I might grab her back and pull her in, embrace her, smell her. She might touch me in a certain way. But that's the agility needed in modern relationship. You need to know which way of relating you're in, navigate it intelligently, and then also know how to switch out of it so you can actually have the intimacy in your life that you want to have, right? So that's kind of a starting point on how this works.
Yeah, beautiful. And I want to also drive home that choice to then shift the polarity and bring that
Yes,
chemistry in. And you know, like,
yes,
okay, we were just an alpha, and now let's create a new moment. And by you really going in and grabbing her, you know that you want to create that commitment, like that chemistry moment together. So then you go and choose to create it. It's not that it just happens. You're
yes.
consciously choosing it.
Absolutely. Consciously choosing it. So I'm consciously choosing to bring it, and she's consciously choosing to receive it, or vice versa. That's the
Yeah.
commitment we have to each other. Because if you don't have that commitment together, you and your partner will get swept up in the momentum of mutually very busy lives and never ending to do lists, and you won't know how to turn alpha off to the point where you're talking about other people constantly. You can't stop talking about work. You're checking emails in your bed. This destroys intimacy in a relationship. The moment you even mention work, you won't have an intimate experience with your partner. The moment you talk about somebody else, intimacy is gone because you've just introduced that person into the moment. So your bedroom, for example, has to become sacred. You know, London and I, we don't have a TV. We're not allowed to bring our phones into our bedroom. And we're not allowed to talk about other people. We rarely ever talk about other people, period. But specifically in the bedroom, no conversations of anyone else because this is our sacred space. When we start developing that level of discipline, we start to realize just how negatively impacted our relationship is by these habit patterns of being chronically stuck in alpha alpha.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've definitely been guilty of that in terms of being so much work mode that it killed polarity in relationships, and where there could have been juicy moments. Like I was just too much in my head, too much in work, and then not soft and surrendered enough to really create as many more moments as there could have been. So for all the ladies, remember when it's time to just put work aside and say, now it's time for that juicy connection and partnership.
Right.
Now
And
I
it's and
want to
I want to speak to that because I feel you on that. And I feel for all the men and women on this call who try to do that. Because let's say you're in such a moment and you make that decision. You're like, okay, now it's time for intimacy. But what if your partner doesn't meet you there? What if your partner's like, I'm busy or I've got things to do on my phone? It'll just push you back into your phone or your work mode. And so you feel like you can't win. And that's where the yoga is so critical because it's more than just saying, okay, now we're going to be intimate. It's about how do you actually create the experience of intimacy for your partner that authentically makes the transition? What are you willing to do that's out of your comfort zone? And what a lot of people get stuck in is they go, well, I'll just wait till I feel like intimacy. I'll wait till I feel turned on, or I'll wait till I feel like there's an opportunity for me to relax. And it doesn't come. It doesn't come. So the yoga is like any other yoga. You go to yoga class even if you don't feel like it. You don't feel like stretching, you don't feel like working out. You go anyway. You feel better afterwards. This is the same. You don't feel like being intimate with your partner, but you pause. You take a breath. You offer a touch that's interesting to them. You invite them into the space of intimacy, and that's how you keep it alive. You have to fight for it.
Yeah, and I used to have like Tantra Tuesdays, for example, because when we get so busy, it's like you have to schedule it in your
Right.
schedule. Like if you're like me and you have clients, you have all these things and podcast recordings and obviously all the other things in the world, some people might think that's lame to schedule sexy time. But even with all of my clients too, it's like literally if you want to have a 3 to 4 hour ritual together, you have to schedule it. It's like a date night. And it's a non-negotiable, just like you would spend time to go to the gym or whatever your relationship is at priority. If you want greater union, you want divine union, sacred intimacy, it's a practice that you build together and you just decide, okay, now is the moment. And I would say like at least 2 times a week, but minimum once, but at least two. I feel like
Absolutely. And it's so important what you're saying because when a couple, and I work with hundreds of couples, when a couple starts prioritizing intimacy again and they feel what's possible when they do that, everything in their life is better. When your intimate relationship is good and you feel connected and sex is hot and you can, like, you're constantly reminded why you're in that partnership, work is easier, kids are easier, life is easier, everything feels better. But when you and your intimate partner are at odds, resentful, not trusting, not communicating, everything's harder. Work is harder. Kids are harder. So once couples reignite that and prioritize intimacy as much as they prioritize money or their clients or their bills, or their kids, just as priority, that's when things really start to change. And I couldn't agree with you more.
absolutely, absolutely. Now I want to shift into kind of like the parallel communication thing that can happen when a man criticizes a woman or makes fun of her or teases her, because that's the thing that really shuts a woman's heart down. And I've had that happen like my whole life, really. I'm not a big, I know it's in some countries like Australia and the UK, there's this thing called taking the piss out of someone. I don't think it's funny. It's like where you make fun of the person and it's supposed to show affection. To me, it's like the least, and I think it's because I have such a feminine heart. Like, I don't think it's funny at all. Yeah, I feel it totally closes me down. And any form of teasing or making fun of is like a form of a criticism. And for me, like, I have always known, like, this is not a turn on. This is actually a turn off. I do not feel connected. If anything, I feel hurt and it makes me pull away. And I saw that you recently wrote a post about this. And I was like, oh, yeah, I would love to talk about this because men and women often say they want to have their best friend as the partner too. And how some guys relate to their best friends is, oh, I'm going to tease my best friend. But that is not the vibe for like juicy, polarizing relationship. And sometimes if men hear it from a woman, they think like, oh, you're too sensitive. And I am sensitive, but that's one of my gifts. but I want men to hear it from a man of what it does to a woman, because sometimes it lands differently when it comes from a man. And it's true, we really grow through compliments, and we want to be seen for our light and our beauty and the love and all the good things. We don't want to be teased about something, because then what will happen is we want to like shrink that part and think like that's not good enough or not lovable or whatever. So I think this is so important if men want to open their women in terms of how to speak to them. And it's not through teasing and criticizing or any of that.
Yes. This is a huge topic, and men do need to hear this. And the reason being is because a woman's softness is sacred. And I'm not just saying that for me or some airy-fairy idea. I mean, a woman's softness is sacred to him. He knows it's sacred. He wants it. Some men have never actually experienced it. They don't know what it's like to feel a woman completely soften and open in his presence and really trust him at the somatic level of her body and of her essence. When a man experiences that, it's a whole different flavor of relationship and intimacy. It gives him a why that he didn't know was there before. A woman's softness is sacred. And so if a man can even start to identify this for himself, if he's mature enough to notice that's true for him, then he needs to start behaving in a way that protects her softness, right? That inspires her trust. And he doesn't get there by mocking her, teasing her, criticizing her, judging her, because every time he does, it's like, one of the common things we'll hear from women is they just don't feel considered in the relationship. And the less considered your feelings are, the more you're going to harden and shrink around him. You're just going to start withholding. Like, I'm not going to show him that. I'm not going to tell him that. I'm not going to let him see me in that. And the body starts to harden. And then when you get into the bedroom, you're going to notice that block is still there. You might still be able to have sex, but you're not liberated in your expression, because he's done all of these little things to slowly harden you and make you feel like you can't trust him with the fullness or the truth of your heart. Right? So how do men do this? One of the ways is he communicates in ways that are casual or humorous to him, not realizing they can feel very offensive and abrasive to a heart that's more sensitive than his. And that's the thing it's important for people to know. The more alpha we are, the more we love criticism and tease and challenge. It's our way of like playing and tussling. But the more omega we are, the more offensive and hurtful that can be. And men can feel like, well, what's wrong with you? You're too sensitive. You're too this. Okay, play that game. But you know what you're going to do? You're going to close her down, and you're going to compromise and lose her softness as a result of that. And she'll just become harder and harder and harder and harder. She might become less expressive. And one side of him's like, yeah, this is great. She's not expressing emotion as much anymore. Like, yeah, good. Suppress that. But the moment he wants to feel her soften or trust him or relax in his presence or feel deeply penetrated by him, it's not there. And he shoots himself in the foot by treating her as if this is the way he treats himself. He talks to himself harshly. But you can't do that to your Omega partner, because there's 3 things everyone needs to understand about Omega. Omega softens through praise, not criticism. Praise. Alpha, it's like, call Alpha a worm, call Alpha weak, say Alpha, you can't do this. And Alpha will be like, I can do this. And it'll kind of boost something up. And the challenge creates the friction. Not with Omega. Omega's the reciprocal. So it's through praise, not criticism. Men, see the qualities in her that you love, that you cherish, that you adore, and praise them. Whether it's in the outfit she wears, or the way her hair is, or the way she looks at you, or the way she loves your child, or the way she met you in a moment. Praise her, and you'll watch her actually start to blossom open. So praise is critical, not criticism. Another thing we want to understand as men is that Omega needs to be seen, not judged. Seen. And so in my body of work, I have a very specific practice for this. We teach men and women how to see each other because we're so unskilled at it. So let's say a man's sitting down and it's, okay, I ask him, what do you see? I see a woman in her childhood wound. Okay, that's not going to get us anywhere. That's harsh. That's going to shut her down. I see you're in a bad mood. All right. Let's see a little bit deeper into her heart. Let's actually look. What do you see? And when men really start to get it, they're able to see, I see a woman who's hurting. I see a woman who's lost trust. I see a woman who loves so deeply it hurts and is frustrated right now because she's not being given the presence she deserves. Now he learns to see and penetrate the superficial. That level of seeing without judgment and criticism is part of what creates the softening in her. And men, if you want to take it a layer deeper, you learn to say, I see because I. This is the big one. You say, I see you're hurting because I spoke harshly to you earlier. I see I've lost your trust because I didn't keep my promise to you. You can just feel the impact of those phrases. Because those phrases are demonstrating an awareness. I'm aware of you, your experience, and the impact I'm having on you. And that awareness is stronger than any I'm sorry. Because I'm sorry doesn't demonstrate that you're aware. But I see because I is the awareness that makes her feel seen and immediately restores trust. Immediately there's a softening through her central channel that is real, that is palpable, and intimacy comes back online. Some people think you need to be in therapy for 5-10 years to do this. No, if you know how to do it, you could do it in a day. You could do it in minutes. But we have to train ourselves to speak in this way. And the third thing that's so important about Omega is that Omega grows through the next natural step, like a flower opening its petals. Alpha grows through scaring the shit out of themselves. I'm afraid of heights. I'm going to go jump out of a plane. That's the way to do it, right? But Omega doesn't work that way. Omega opens one petal at a time. So in order to have a relationship where we're with a woman where the longer we're together, the more she trusts, the more she opens, the more radiant she becomes, we must understand how to foster this gentle Omega sensitivity and revere it as something sacred. Because when a man does, when he protects her softness, when he enters the room, he will watch his partner soften in his presence. That is ecstasy. When he cherishes her sensitivity, she becomes wiser and becomes like an oracle to him because she can feel into things he could never see on his own. And it's through this softening that he gains greater access not only to her heart, but also to her body, because a woman's body softens through her heart. So these are the things that every man needs to know and to correct, to stop treating her like he would his friends or himself, and to start actually cherishing these parts so he can experience what it's like to be in that kind of relationship, the relationship he really wants.
Absolutely. And as you're speaking, I just keep feeling the archetype of the protector. So it's like men, that's what's being asked of you. If you are going to step into the archetype of protector, protecting her heart, protecting the union, protecting the softness, it's like imagining she's a rose. You're not going to do the things that her petals are going to fall off. You're going to want to preserve the petals, allow the blossoming to open. And every time the criticizing or the teasing or whatever, that's knocking the petals off the rose. And so really, men, think about like, okay, if I'm protecting this woman because it will protect our relationship and the sanctity and the sacredness of our relationship, which is related to her softness, like probably the level of softness a woman can go will be the level of depth and yumminess and how much you'll be enjoy in the relationship. That's what you want to think before you act, think before you speak. And like, is this going to protect? Is this going to protect her? Is this going to honor her softness? And speaking from that place, and everything that you shared, I resonate with so much. Like, I even remember one time when I was dating someone, we were in this Black Diamond in Aspen, and he just kept being like, come on, just go. And every time he was trying to like tell me what to do or to just go or be like this competition, it would make me want to go less. Whereas if you would have just been like, babe, you could do it, I have full faith in you, that's gonna open me. Not like, come on, like, we're not guys.
No.
Not guys. It's like the opposite of how you would talk to your male friends. It's that softer part of your heart is needed to connect to the soft part of our heart.
Yeah. And I think all men can know the feeling of wanting to protect his intimate partner from other men, right? If some guy comes up and talks this way or behaves this way or treats, like, you can feel that sense of wanting to protect her. But if you were to turn that on yourself, man, are you protecting her from yourself and your reactive patterns? Because if another man spoke to her the way you speak to her, would you want to protect her from that guy? Like, you really need to look at the way you're behaving and treating her. And do you want to protect her from another dude who might treat her the same? It's like, that's where you know you've got work to do. And one of the things men need to learn more than anything is to be aware in the present moment. Because the way you speak to her in the present moment will immediately tell you if you're opening or closing her. You can't just be like, blah, da, 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 and expect your harsh words that close her now are going to open her later. That's not how it works. As you speak in the present moment, you will see, is she softening with every word you say, or is she hardening? And it's that level of awareness we need to develop.
Absolutely. And that's the deeper work that you do with men inside your work to help them to develop that sensitivity. And I remember
sure.
that actually from the workshops as well. And ladies, I also feel like it's also our responsibility to show in real time, like, I've actually cried. It might seem so silly, but the moment something was teased, like about my light language or anything from like a guy, like, I literally cried. And for some, it can be so shocking, but they need to see the impact that it has on us also. So, ladies, it's our responsibility to show them, not necessarily tell them, like, hey, don't talk to me like that, because then we're meeting them alpha, but to show, like, ow, this is what you did. Like, this, you saying that did this, and cry or show your shock on your face, or however you genuinely feel. It's our responsibility to show that.
And that information is so important for him as well, as you said. You know, and one of the things that we teach in our practice is how do we express that emotion in a way that actually invites somebody into our experience. And when we do put words on it, not a story, but just words on the emotion, what's the actual feeling there? I feel hurt. I feel a loss of trust. I feel afraid right now. I feel vulnerable. I feel stupid, right? We bring those words into our language to actually let our partner understand the experience they're creating for us. Now, what we tend to do is we tend to go, I feel hurt because you, da 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 da. I feel angry because you, da 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 da. Right? And we say, I feel because you, because you, because you. It doesn't matter who our partner is, how awake or conscious or loving they are. When we say, I feel because you, it's an attack at that person, and they are going to react defensively. They have to be pretty dang loving and conscious not to. So where we learn how to communicate these feelings is, I feel because I. And that becomes an invitation into our felt experience. I feel hurt because I'm telling myself that there's no room for my emotions in this relationship. Now, can you hear that was an honest transmission, but it's not a dagger. It's an invitation into our authentic experience, inviting our partner into that world. And most men and women don't want to be that vulnerable. They don't want to love at that level. They're scared. I'll get hurt if I go there. But the truth is, when you learn to go to that place with the partner you're choosing to love and trust and bring them there, you start to experience being loved in a way that you didn't know was possible. You really start to get the experience that your emotions are allowed in this relationship and all parts of you can be there and you can be loved through it all. But it starts with one partner being willing to be the seer. I see because I. And a feeler who's willing to say, I feel because I. That creates the fertile ground for healing. And what's so beautiful is as we do that together, it preserves polarity. Because so long as there is one seer and one feeler, that's polarity. When there's two seers, that's resonance. When there's two feelers, that's resonance. I see you're doing that wrong. Well, I see you're doing that wrong. No, you're the one who's doing that wrong. I feel hurt and frustrated. Well, I feel. I feel. No, I feel. The moment you have a seer and a feeler, I see. This is your experience. I feel this. You create the infinity loop. This is why therapy is so healing. In therapy, there's a seer and a feeler present. You learn to bring that into intimacy through a seer and feeler, and not add story or analysis or debate. You just see and feel purely. This becomes a form of yogic meditation, and intimacy will always be waiting for you on the other side of it.
Yeah, and as someone who works with couples as well, I think the yoga part is the most important part. Like, we can talk until we're blue in the face and it may not shift anything. It's really getting into the body, because so much lives in the body thematically, and intimacy, that yummy, delicious glue, is what holds us together in the face of trigger. And it's through the intimacy work combined with the communication that we can really heal and reach these next level relationships. And I just really want to drive that home as we're coming to a close, because I think people are talking a little bit too much and creating too much story. And the intention for today was really about communication that's going to deepen and union and connection, not so much about who's right or how to do it. No, it's more about what's going to create more connection, attraction, polarity, so that we can connect more, because that's really what we want.
Yeah. And we want to find a way to include our emotions and our experience, but we don't want it to come at the cost of our intimate connection, right? Because how many people go into a therapy session where they're discussing all these things and it's very healing and helpful, but how many of them feel like having sex after that session? How many of them feel deeply attracted to each other afterwards? Not many. That's going to be a very rare experience, because when we're meeting in those conversations, we're in a resonant field. But when we learn how to actually preserve polarity and include emotions without the story, but let it run through the body, we start to unlock the deepest kind of sex that we've ever had in our lives. And once someone tastes that, they can't go back. Once someone knows that's actually possible and real, they will continue to practice. And that's what London and I have done over 15 years of our lives. And that's what we inspire so many others to do. Once you taste it, you become a practitioner. It's like seeing the Matrix. You can't unsee it.
Absolutely. And I know that when I've done the workshops and all of that, for me, I remember it was a liberation. I still remember the day where I was like, oh my gosh, my spicy Latina is wanted in relationship.
Mm.
That was like an enlightenment day, where I
Mm.
had been so much in masculine type of spirituality, like, oh, I have to empty myself of emotions. I have to make sure I feel peace and harmony all the time. Whereas in this work, the true authentic feeling is what's needed for the transformation, for the connection, for the polarity to happen. And I just know, as an emotional feminine woman, I felt so liberated, because I was operating in a different structure that was really meant for men. Not for the wild feminine heart. And so yeah, I love this work so much for relationship work. And so I thank you, and I also thank London, both of you, for doing this work and continuing to share it. And I have your new book too. I haven't gotten into it yet, so I'm looking forward to doing that. And we're going to include the links for everyone as well to both of their books, as well as how you can connect with them. And inside the bonus content, you and London are going to be, it's a guided experience for couples if you want to experience some of this work as well. So we'll be sharing that. And Justin, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners and viewers, where people can find you? Anything else you feel called?
Sure. My website is justinpatrickpierce.com. London and I are teaching online classes once a month for men, women, and couples. We'll do a men's call, women's call. And all of those calls can be found on Patreon, patreon.com/yoga of intimacy. So that's a great place for you to just call in from anywhere in the world and be guided in these practices with your partner or by yourself. Great way to really immerse into these practices and become part of the community. London, I will also be doing our final in-person event of this year at Kripalu. It's a beautiful yoga meditation university in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and we'll be there July 31st to August 5th, offering workshops for singles and couples. There's still spots remaining, so if you'd like to be there, it's a great opportunity before the end of the year.
Beautiful. So thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you inside the bonus content, and we'll see you on Instagram. Thank you for being here, and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.